what medieval princess life was really like. Forget everything Disney taught you. Medieval princesses didn't spend their days singing to birds, dancing at balls, or waiting for Prince Charming. The reality? They were political pawns, baby-making machines, and often prisoners in their own castles. Their lives were filled with more political intrigue, arranged marriages, and survival challenges than any modern thriller. Today, we're shattering the fairy tale myths and revealing what it really meant to be a medieval princess. Trust me, you'll never look at Cinderella the same way again. A medieval princess's fate was sealed the moment she drew her first breath. While noble families celebrated the birth of sons, daughters were immediately seen as valuable trading cards in the medieval political game. By age 3 or 4, princesses were already being tutored in languages, etiquette, and the skills needed to manage a household of hundreds. But here's the kicker. They weren't learning these things for personal growth. They were being groomed for marriage alliances that would benefit their father's kingdom. Education was strictly limited and purposeful. Princesses learned to read and write, but only enough to manage correspondence and household accounts. Mathematics was taught, but only for managing dowries and calculating trade agreements. Art and music weren't creative outlets. They were performance skills to impress potential husbands and their families. Most shocking of all, many princesses were betrothed before they could even walk. Marriage contracts were signed when girls were still in diapers, their entire futures decided by men they'd never meet. Here's where the fairy tales get it completely wrong. Medieval princesses rarely married for love. They were literally human currency in international diplomacy. Their marriages sealed peace treaties, formed military alliances, and merged kingdoms. The average medieval princess was married between ages 12 and 16, often to men decades older whom they'd never met before their wedding day. The marriage ceremony itself was a business transaction, complete with detailed contracts specifying everything from dowry amounts to what happened if the princess failed to produce male heirs. But here's what's truly horrifying. Many princesses were married multiple times. When their husbands died in war or from disease, which happened frequently, they were immediately remarried to serve new political purposes. Some princesses had 3 or 4 husbands before age 25. The wedding night wasn't romantic, it was a political necessity, witnessed by court officials who needed to verify the marriage was consummated. Privacy was a luxury medieval princesses simply didn't have. Think medieval princesses lived in luxury? Think again. Even royal castles were cold, damp, and uncomfortable. Princesses often shared rooms with multiple servants and ladies in waiting. Personal space was non-existent. Their daily schedule was rigid and exhausting. Dawn, wake up for prayers mandatory, not optional morning. Lessons in household management, languages, or needlework midday. Formal meals with strict etiquette requirements afternoon. More lessons or managing servants and supplies evening. Entertainment if they were lucky or more work night. More prayers before bed. Bathing was a monthly affair at best. Princesses wore the same heavy, uncomfortable dresses for days. Their elaborate hairstyles weren't washed for weeks. The glamorous medieval lifestyle was actually pretty gross by modern standards. Food wasn't much better. Even royal kitchens had limited variety, especially in winter. Meat was often spoiled, bread was coarse, and vegetables were scarce. Many princesses suffered from malnutrition despite their royal status. Once married, a medieval princess had exactly one job that mattered: producing male heirs. The pressure was enormous and never-ending. Queens who failed to produce sons were divorced, sent to convents, or worse. Pregnancy in medieval times was extremely dangerous. There was no medical care, no pain relief, and no understanding of hygiene. Many princesses died in childbirth. In fact, it was one of the leading causes of death among medieval women, regardless of their social status. But even successful pregnancies came with challenges. Princesses were expected to continue their royal duties throughout pregnancy. They attended court functions, managed households, and participated in political ceremonies right up until labor began. Postpartum? There was no maternity leave for medieval princesses. They were expected to be back to official duties within weeks of giving birth, often while still recovering from traumatic deliveries. Medieval princesses were essentially high-class prisoners. They couldn't travel without permission, couldn't choose their own friends, and certainly couldn't make major decisions about their own lives. Every aspect of their existence served political purposes. Their clothing choices conveyed diplomatic messages. Their attendance at events signaled royal approval or disapproval. Even their facial expressions were scrutinized for political meaning. Many princesses were used as hostages in peace negotiations. They'd be sent to enemy courts as guests, basically royal prisoners, ensuring their father's good behavior. Some spent years in foreign castles, separated from family and homeland, serving as living insurance policies for peace treaties. The most successful medieval princesses weren't the prettiest or most charming. They were the ones who became skilled political operators, learning to navigate court intrigue and manipulate the system that oppressed them. But here's where the story gets interesting. Some medieval princesses learned to work within the system to gain real power. They became master manipulators, using their positions to influence policy, protect their children, and sometimes even rule kingdoms. Eleanor of Aquitaine controlled vast territories and went on crusades. Empress Matilda fought a civil war for the English throne. These women weren't passive fairy tale princesses. They were medieval power players who refused to be just political pawns. However, such success required incredible intelligence, ruthlessness, and luck. Most princesses never got the chance to wield real power, remaining confined to their assigned roles throughout their lives. Medieval courts were hotbeds of gossip, betrayal, and danger. Princesses lived under constant scrutiny, where a single mistake could result in accusations of adultery, treason, or witchcraft. Court ladies weren't friends. They were spies, rivals, and potential threats. Every conversation was analyzed for hidden meanings. Princesses had to master the art of saying nothing while appearing to say everything. Poisoning was a real threat. Many medieval princesses employed food tasters and lived in constant fear of assassination attempts. Political marriages meant they were often surrounded by people who saw them as obstacles to power rather than allies. The disconnect between fairy tale princesses and historical reality reveals something important about how we romanticize the past. Medieval princesses weren't living fairy tales. They were surviving in a world that treated women as property, regardless of their royal status. Their real stories are far more fascinating than any Disney movie. These were women who navigated impossible political situations, survived dangerous pregnancies, and sometimes managed to carve out spaces of power in a system designed to control them completely. Medieval princesses weren't waiting for princes to save them. They were fighting to save themselves in a world that offered them few choices and fewer freedoms. Their real power came not from magic wands or fairy godmothers, but from intelligence, resilience, and the determination to survive in impossible circumstances. The next time you see a Disney princess movie, remember the real medieval women who inspired these stories. They weren't princesses because life was easy. They were extraordinary because they thrived despite a system designed to break them. Their true legacy isn't in fairy tales, but in the courage they showed facing a reality far harsher than any fictional kingdom.